I always believed life moved at its own pace. Some dreams took longer than others, and I was okay with that. I had been with Olivia for 7 years, and I honestly thought we were building a future together. "You've been writing all day again," Olivia said as she walked into my apartment. I smiled. "Almost done. Just a few more chapters, then I'll send the manuscript." She looked at the stack of papers on my desk but didn't smile back. "You always say that." "I know," I replied. "But this time it's different." I reached into my drawer for the small ring box I had bought months earlier. I didn't show it to her. I wanted to wait until my novel was finished. I wanted everything to be perfect. Instead, everything fell apart. "Ethan," she said quietly, "we need to talk." The moment I heard those words, something inside me felt wrong. "What happened?" She took a deep breath. "I can't do this anymore." I frowned. "Do what?" "This life. Waiting. Hoping. Believing things will get better." "They will." "When?" "Soon." "You've been saying soon for years." Her words hit harder than I expected. "I'm trying, Olivia." "I know you're trying." "Then why are you saying this?" She looked away before answering. "Because trying isn't enough anymore." Silence filled the room. "I love you," I said. "Isn't that enough to keep fighting together?" She slowly shook her head. "Love doesn't pay bills." I stared at her. "I've stood beside you for 7 years," she continued. "But I can't keep waiting for a dream that may never happen. My book will be finished. And what if nobody buys it? I'll write another. And another? I won't give up." She sighed. "I already have." The words felt like someone had pulled the ground from beneath my feet. There's someone else, isn't there?" She closed her eyes for a second. "Yes." I couldn't breathe. "Who?" "Ryan. The businessman?" She nodded. "He has a stable life. He knows what he wants. And I don't." "Ethan? I don't want to hurt you." "You already are." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry." "No," I whispered. "You're not." She looked at me with sadness, but she didn't deny it. "I hope one day you understand." "I don't think I ever will." She picked up her bag. "I really did love you." I laughed quietly, even though it hurt. "If that's true, why are you leaving?" She had no answer. She walked to the door. For 1 second, I thought she might stop. She didn't. The door closed. The apartment became painfully quiet. I stood there for what felt like forever. The future I had imagined was gone. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was my sister. "Ethan?" I couldn't speak. "What's wrong?" She left. Grace stayed silent for a moment. "I'm coming over." "You don't have to. I'm already on my way." Half an hour later, Grace and my best friend Daniel were sitting across from me. Daniel looked at the empty coffee cup beside me. "You haven't moved." "I can't." Grace reached for my hand. "You'll get through this." "It doesn't feel like it." Daniel sighed. "If she walked away this easily, maybe she wasn't the person you thought she was." "I spent 7 years loving her." "I know. So what do I do now?" Neither of them answered immediately. Finally, Grace spoke. "You wake up tomorrow. And then? You keep going." I looked around the apartment. Every corner reminded me of Olivia. Every memory hurt. After they left, I walked back to my desk. The unfinished manuscript was still there. Only that morning, it had felt like the beginning of my future. Now it looked like proof that I had failed. I picked up the first page and read a few lines. The words no longer meant anything. I slowly placed the pages back on the desk. For the first time since I started writing, I wondered if finishing the story even mattered anymore. 3 months passed, but nothing really changed. I still woke up hoping everything had been a bad dream. Every morning, reality reminded me that Olivia was gone. Grace visited almost every weekend. One Saturday, she walked into my apartment and looked around. "Ethan, have you eaten today?" "I had coffee." "Coffee isn't food." "I'm not hungry." She crossed her arms. "You're saying that every time I come here." I forced a small smile. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." She opened my refrigerator and sighed. "You can't keep living like this." "I'm trying." "No," she said softly. "You're surviving, not living." I didn't answer. A few days later, Daniel stopped by after work. He looked at the stack of papers on my desk. You haven't touched the manuscript. I shook my head. Why? What's the point? The point is that you've spent 3 years writing it. I don't care anymore. You do. I don't. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat beside me. Ethan, answer me honestly. What? If Olivia came back tomorrow, would everything suddenly be okay? I stayed quiet. See, he said. You're letting one person control your entire life. It isn't that simple. I know it isn't. He leaned forward. But you're giving her power she doesn't even know she has. His words stayed with me long after he left. That night, I opened my laptop. The unfinished manuscript was still there. I read the first chapter. Then I closed it again. I can't, I whispered to myself. Weeks passed. I stopped answering most phone calls. I avoided family dinners. I ignored messages from old friends. Every mirror showed someone I barely recognized. One afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Hello? Hi. Is this Ethan Carter? Yes. My name is Claire Morgan. I frowned. I'm sorry, do I know you? No. Then how did you get my number? I hope you don't mind. A mutual friend gave it to me. What is this about? I read part of your novel online. I blinked. My novel. You uploaded the first few chapters to a writer's forum almost a year ago. I had forgotten about that. I wanted to ask if you finished it. No. Why not? I laughed bitterly. Life happened. There was a short silence. I think you should finish it. You've only read a few chapters. And they stayed in my mind for weeks. You don't understand. Then help me understand. I don't have the confidence anymore. Did someone tell you that you weren't good enough? No. Then why did you stop believing in yourself? I looked toward the empty chair where Olivia used to sit. Because someone I trusted stopped believing in me. Claire didn't interrupt. After a moment, she said quietly, those are two different things. What do you mean? Someone else's opinion doesn't decide your value. I wish it were that easy. It isn't easy, she admitted. But it is true. I rubbed my forehead. I don't even know why I'm telling you all this. Maybe because you've been carrying it alone. Her words caught me off guard. I think your story deserves an ending, she continued. I'm not talking about the novel. I stayed silent. I mean your life. After the call ended, I sat in front of my computer for a long time. My fingers rested on the keyboard, but they didn't move. Olivia's voice echoed inside my head. Love doesn't pay bills. Waiting isn't enough. I already gave up. Those words had become part of me. Every decision I made was still connected to the day she walked away. I finally understood what Daniel had meant. I wasn't just missing Olivia. I was living inside the version of myself she had left behind. I opened the manuscript again. The blinking cursor waited for me. I typed one sentence. Then another. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But it was something. I leaned back and took a deep breath. I don't know if anyone will ever read this, I said quietly. But I'm done letting one goodbye decide the rest of my life. For the first time in months, I made myself one promise. No matter how long it took, I would finish the story. Not so Olivia would regret leaving me. Not so anyone would feel sorry for me. I would finish it because I refused to lose myself completely. The promise I made to myself changed everything. It wasn't a big change. I still woke up with memories of Olivia. I still had days when I wanted to close my laptop and forget about writing. But every morning, I forced myself to write at least one page. One page became 2. 2 became 5. Slowly, the story started growing again. A week later, Claire called me. How's the novel? I wrote 3 chapters. I knew you would. I almost quit twice. But you didn't. I smiled. No, I didn't. She laughed. I want you to meet someone. Who? A publisher named Victor Hale. I don't think I'm ready. You'll never feel ready. What if he hates it? Then you'll learn something. A few days later, I walked into Victor's office. He looked through the first few pages without saying much. After nearly 20 minutes, he closed the manuscript. It's not ready. Those 3 words hit me hard. I understand, I said quietly. Victor looked at me. Do you? I guess I'm not a good writer. I didn't say that. You said it wasn't ready. There's a difference. I frowned. Tell me something, Ethan. Okay. Who are you writing for? The readers. No. I looked confused. I don't understand. You're writing for the people you want to impress. He tapped the manuscript. This doesn't sound honest. I stayed silent. I can tell you're hiding. Hiding what? Your real feelings. I looked away. I don't want people to know how broken I was. Victor nodded. That's exactly what they need to know. What? Readers don't connect with perfect people. They connect with truth. His words stayed with me all day. That night, I opened the manuscript again. I deleted several pages. Then I started writing from my heart instead of my pride. I wrote about fear. I wrote about losing someone I trusted. I wrote about sitting alone in an apartment that suddenly felt empty. Every sentence felt painful. Every chapter felt like I was letting go of another piece of my past. Sometimes I stopped because my eyes filled with tears. Sometimes I laughed while remembering the good moments. For the first time, my story sounded real. Claire called again a month later. Can I read the new version? I think it's finally honest. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. She read the entire manuscript over 2 days. When she called back, I could hear excitement in her voice. Ethan. Yeah? This is completely different. In a good way. In the best way. I let out a long breath. I was scared to write like this. I know. It feels like people are reading my heart. They are. Meanwhile, life kept moving forward. I spent most of my time writing, editing, and rewriting. I didn't know anything about Olivia anymore. I didn't know that her life wasn't as perfect as it looked. She had chosen Ryan because she believed he could give her security. But money couldn't give her peace. Ryan was always busy. Whenever she wanted to talk, he looked at his phone instead. Whenever she shared an opinion, he interrupted her. You worry too much, he often told her. Little by little, she stopped arguing. She stopped calling old friends. She spent more time alone. Sometimes she searched my name online. She saw small posts about my writing. She never contacted me. And I never knew she was looking. One afternoon, Claire called again. I have news. Good or bad? I'll let Victor tell you. A few hours later, I sat across from Victor again. He placed my manuscript on the desk. I couldn't read his expression. He looked at me for several seconds. Then he smiled. I was wrong. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? I said this book wasn't ready. I nodded. You proved me wrong. I stared at him. I've decided to publish it. I couldn't speak. Congratulations, Ethan. I finally found my voice. Really? Really? I looked down at the manuscript that had once reminded me of failure. Now it looked like the beginning of a new life. For the first time in years, I smiled without forcing myself. Maybe losing the person I loved hadn't been the end of my story. Maybe it had simply been the chapter that taught me how to write the rest. 6 months after my novel was published, my life looked completely different. The book sold better than anyone expected. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then the reviews kept coming, and people started sharing how much the story meant to them. One morning, Claire called me. Ethan, are you busy? Not really. You have another interview this afternoon. I laughed. I still can't believe people want to interview me. They don't just want to interview you, she said. They want to hear your story. A few hours later, I walked into a small television studio. A young woman smiled as she walked over. Hi, I'm Emma Lawson. I'm Ethan. It's nice to finally meet you. You too. She shook my hand and said, Ready? I think so. During the interview, she smiled warmly. Your novel is touching people around the world. Where did the emotions come from? I hesitated. Real life. So the pain in your story was real. I nodded. Yes. Did writing help you heal? It did. She looked at me for a moment before asking another question. Would you ever write about love again? I smiled faintly. I don't think love ever leaves us. Even when it hurts. Emma nodded. That's a beautiful answer. After the interview, she walked me to the exit. You know, she said, you smile when people ask about your books. I do. Yes. But when they ask about love, your eyes become sad. I laughed quietly. I guess some scars stay longer than others. She didn't push for more. It was nice talking to you. You too. As the months passed, the interviews became more frequent. Bookstores invited me to sign copies. Readers waited in long lines just to say thank you. Every time someone told me my story had helped them through a difficult time, I felt grateful. I had started writing to save myself. I never imagined it would help other people too. While my life slowly became brighter, I had no idea what was happening in Olivia's world. Ryan wasn't the man she believed he was. He lied about where he spent his evenings. He cancelled plans without explanation. Whenever Olivia asked questions, he became angry. One evening, she finally confronted him. "Were you with someone else?" Ryan looked annoyed. "I don't have to explain every minute of my day." "You didn't answer me." "I said I'm busy." "You've been busy for weeks." Ryan sighed. "If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together." She looked at him in silence. Deep inside, she already knew the truth. A few days later, she found messages on his phone. Everything she feared was real. The engagement ended that same night. 4 days, she stayed inside her apartment. She opened an old box filled with photos, birthday cards, and letters. At the bottom was a small envelope with my handwriting. She slowly opened it. Inside was a note I had written years ago. "No matter what happens, I'll always choose you." She covered her face and cried. For the first time, she understood what she had thrown away. A week later, Mason visited her. He sat across from her without saying anything for a while. Finally, he spoke. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better." He nodded. "I heard about Ryan." "I don't want to talk about him." "Then let's talk about Ethan." She looked up. "What about him?" "I read his book." "You did?" "Yeah." "What did you think?" Mason sighed. "I think we judged him too quickly." She lowered her eyes. "I know. He loved you more than anyone could." "I know. And we kept telling you he wasn't good enough." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I listened." Mason gently shook his head. "I wish we hadn't pushed you so hard." "So do I." That night, Olivia searched my name online again. She watched videos from my interviews. She read articles about my success. She stared at one photo for a long time. I looked happy. Not the forced smile she remembered. A real one. She whispered to herself, "I made the biggest mistake of my life." At that exact moment, I was sitting in another city, signing books and laughing with readers. I had no idea Olivia was thinking about me again. I believed that chapter of my life had ended forever. I didn't know someone from my past was already trying to find her way back into my future. Rain had been falling since morning. The bookstore was still full of readers waiting for me to sign their copies. I smiled, thanked each person, and listened as they shared how my novel had helped them. One young man said, "Your book gave me hope after my breakup." I smiled. "I'm glad it did." An older woman added, "Thank you for writing something so honest." "Thank you for reading it," I replied. After the last reader left, I packed my bag and walked toward the exit. The rain was heavier now. As soon as I stepped outside, I saw someone standing under a black umbrella. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Then she looked at me. "Ethan." My heart skipped a beat. "Olivia." She nodded slowly. "Hi." I stood there without moving. 7 years of memories rushed through my mind, but I didn't feel the same pain I once had. "You look different," she said. "So do you." She gave a small smile, but it disappeared almost immediately. "Do you have a few minutes?" I looked at the coffee shop across the street. "Let's get out of the rain." We sat by the window with 2 cups of coffee between us. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Finally, she broke the silence. "I've practiced this conversation 100 times. I never imagined we'd have it." She looked down at her hands. "I don't know where to begin. The truth is usually the easiest place." She nodded. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." I stayed quiet. "I thought choosing Ryan would make me happy." She laughed bitterly. "I was so sure I was making the right decision." "What changed?" "He changed." She looked out the window. "No, maybe he was always like that. I just refused to see it." I listened without interrupting. "He controlled everything," she continued. "Who I talked to, where I went, even what I wore sometimes. I'm sorry. I kept telling myself things would get better." They didn't. She shook her head. They only got worse. I remembered saying those exact words to her years ago. They will get better. Back then, she hadn't believed me. Now life had taught her its own lesson. She looked at me again. I read your book. Thank you. I cried through half of it. I smiled politely. It wasn't easy to write. I know. She took a deep breath. Some parts felt like you were writing about us. Some parts were. I'm sorry, Ethan. I looked at her calmly. I know. No, she said, her voice shaking. You don't understand. She wiped away a tear. I didn't just leave you. She looked into my eyes. I left when you needed someone to believe in you. I didn't answer. I keep thinking about that night. So do I. If I could go back. You can't. I know. Silence filled the table again. Finally, she whispered, do you hate me? I thought about the question carefully. I used to. She lowered her head. But not anymore. She looked surprised. Then why don't you sound happy to see me? Because forgiving someone isn't the same as forgetting. Another tear rolled down her cheek. I deserve that. I slowly stirred my coffee. I spent a long time asking myself why I wasn't enough. She closed her eyes. You were enough. Then why did you leave? Because I was selfish. She answered without hesitation. I was scared. I wanted certainty. I thought money would give me the future I wanted. And did it? She let out a quiet laugh. It gave me the loneliest years of my life. I nodded but said nothing. She reached into her bag and placed something on the table. It was an old photograph. The two of us were smiling outside a small restaurant on our 3rd anniversary. I carry this everywhere. I looked at it for a moment before sliding it back toward her. Keep it. I can't throw it away. You don't have to. She looked at me with hopeful eyes. Is there any chance we could start over? The question hung between us. I remembered the nights I couldn't sleep. The days I doubted myself. The moment she walked away without looking back. Then I looked at the man I had become. I don't know, I answered honestly. She nodded. I wasn't expecting an easy answer. I need time. Of course. I've changed, Olivia. I can see that. And my life has changed too. I know. She stood up slowly. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. You too. She started walking toward the door, then stopped. Without turning around, she said quietly, no matter what happens. I'm truly sorry. After she left, I sat alone for several minutes. The rain continued tapping against the window. Years ago, I would have run after her. This time, I didn't move. I realized something had changed inside me. Seeing Olivia again had reopened old memories. But it hadn't reopened my heart. For the first time, I understood that some people return because they finally realize your value. The problem is, sometimes they arrive after you've already learned yours. After meeting Olivia again, I expected old feelings to come back. Instead, I felt strangely calm. I still thought about our conversation, but it no longer controlled my days. A week later, she called me. Hi, Ethan. Hi. I hope I'm not bothering you. No. I was wondering if we could meet again. I stayed quiet for a moment. Okay. We met in a small park near the river. She looked nervous as she sat across from me. Thank you for coming. You said you wanted to talk. She nodded. I've spent years thinking about what I should say. You don't have to make a speech. I know. She looked down. I just want you to know how sorry I am. I've heard that before. I know. But I never told you everything. I waited. When I left, I told myself I was choosing a better future. She smiled sadly. I wasn't. I was choosing the easier path. She took a deep breath. I left you when you needed someone to stand beside you. I looked at the river. That hurt more than you know. I believe that. She wiped away a tear. I can't change what I did. No. But if I could. You can't. She nodded slowly. I know. Before we left, she quietly said, even if you never forgive me, thank you for listening. A few days later, someone unexpected knocked on my door. When I opened it, Eleanor stood there. Mrs. Brooks. I know I shouldn't be here. I invited her inside. She looked around the apartment before speaking. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. She folded her hands together. When Olivia told me about you years ago, I judged you. I stayed silent. I kept telling her that love wasn't enough. She looked down. I told her to find someone who could give her a richer life. I remembered those words. They sounded painfully familiar. I thought I was protecting my daughter. She sighed. I was teaching her to value the wrong things. I nodded slowly. We all make mistakes. I just wish mine hadn't hurt both of you. After she left, I sat quietly for a long time. Not because I was angry. Because I finally understood how many lives had been shaped by one decision. The following weekend, Mason called. Can we meet? We met at a cafe. As soon as he sat down, he said, I'm sorry. I looked surprised. For what? For judging you. You were protecting your sister. I was. He smiled sadly. But I was also arrogant. He looked me in the eyes. I thought success only came from money. I laughed quietly. So did a lot of people. I was wrong. He held out his hand. I hope one day you can forgive me. I shook it. I already have. A few days later, Emma invited me to dinner after another interview. Halfway through the meal, she looked at me carefully. You've been distracted. I guess I have. Is it Olivia? I smiled. You notice everything. It's my job. I told her about the recent meetings. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. What do you really want? I don't know. I think you do. I looked out the window. I don't hate her anymore. But I can't go back. Emma nodded. Forgiveness isn't the same as returning. I looked at her. I was thinking the same thing. She smiled. Then maybe your heart has already made its decision. That night, I opened an old box in my closet. Inside were photographs, movie tickets, birthday cards, and little notes Olivia had written years ago. I smiled at some memories. Others still hurt. But something felt different. I wasn't wishing for those days to return. I was simply remembering them. I placed everything back into the box and closed the lid. Then I whispered to myself, I don't miss her. The word surprised me. After a long silence, I corrected myself. I missed the dreams I built with her. There was a difference. The woman I loved belonged to my past. The future I wanted no longer included waiting for someone to choose me. For years, I believed healing meant forgetting. Now I finally understood the truth. Healing meant remembering without breaking. As I turned off the light and prepared for bed, I realized something I never thought I would feel again. Peace. Real, quiet peace. For the first time since Olivia walked away, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was finally living again. The launch of my second novel was bigger than I ever imagined. The bookstore was filled with readers, cameras, and reporters. Claire walked over with a smile. Ready for another busy day? I laughed. I don't think I'll ever get used to this. You don't have to. Just enjoy it. For the next 2 hours, I signed books, took pictures, and thanked every reader who waited in line. As the event was coming to an end, Claire quietly walked over. Ethan. Yeah? Someone wants to see you. I looked toward the entrance. Olivia was standing there. She wasn't carrying flowers or a gift. She was simply waiting. I'll be outside, she said softly. I nodded. A few minutes later, I joined her. The evening air was cool, and the streets were almost empty. Thanks for coming, she said. I wasn't sure if I should. I understand. We started walking without saying much. Finally, she stopped near a quiet park. I've been thinking about you every day. I stayed silent. I know I don't deserve another chance. You don't have to say that. But it's true. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. If I could go back to that night, I would never leave. I took a slow breath. I believe you. You do? Yes. She looked surprised. Then, is there hope for us? I looked at her for a long moment. When you left, I thought my life was over. She lowered her head. I questioned everything about myself. I know. I wondered why I wasn't enough. I'm so sorry. I stopped writing. She quietly wiped away another tear. I almost gave up on my dreams. I know. But then something changed. She waited. I realized I had two choices. What were they? I could spend my life waiting for you to come back. Or? Or I could build a life that didn't depend on you. She nodded slowly. And you did. I did. She smiled sadly. I've read both of your books. Thank you. In every page, I could see you becoming stronger. I was. She looked at me with hope. Maybe we can start a new chapter together. I smiled gently. Olivia. Yes? While you were trying to find your way back into my life. I paused for a moment. I had already written its final chapter. The words hung between us. She closed her eyes. I think I knew that. There isn't any anger left inside me. I can see that. I don't blame you anymore. But you don't love me anymore either. I answered honestly. No. A tear rolled down her face. I deserve that. No. She looked confused. You deserve honesty. She nodded. I spent years hoping you would forgive me. I have. And I spent even more years hoping you'd still love me. I didn't answer. She smiled through her tears. Silence is an answer too. I took a deep breath. You once told me that love wasn't enough. She closed her eyes. I'll regret saying that forever. I used to think those words destroyed me. And now I realize they changed me. She looked at me carefully. Losing you forced me to become someone stronger. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. But pain has a strange way of teaching us. She gave a small laugh. You became the man I always believed you could be. I became the man I needed to be. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the end of a very long journey. She reached into her bag and pulled out the old photograph from years ago. I think it's time. She handed it to me. I looked at it one last time before smiling. It belongs to the past. It does. She folded it carefully and placed it back inside her bag. I'll keep it as a reminder. Of what? That some mistakes only teach their lesson after everything is gone. I nodded. I hope you're happy, Ethan. I am. I always wanted that for you. I know. She took one step backward. I guess this is goodbye. This time, it is. She smiled through her tears. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to love you back. And thank you. For what? For teaching me that my happiness should never depend on someone else's choice. She nodded one final time. Then she turned around and walked away. I watched until she disappeared at the end of the street. Years ago, I had watched her leave with nothing but heartbreak. This time, I watched her go with peace in my heart. Some people return hoping to rewrite the past. But not every story is meant to have the ending they want. As I walked back toward the bookstore, I smiled to myself. For the first time, I truly believed that the hardest chapter of my life was finally over. Almost a year had passed since I said goodbye to Olivia for the last time. Life felt different now. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had finally learned how to enjoy the present instead of living in the past. My second novel became another bestseller, and readers continued sending me letters from different parts of the world. One afternoon, I walked into my publisher's office. Victor stood up with a wide smile. Ethan, I have good news. I laughed. You always have good news these days. He handed me a folder. I want to offer you a contract for your third novel. I looked at the papers and smiled. I never thought I'd hear those words. You earned them. I shook his hand. Thank you for believing in me. You did the hard part, he replied. You believed in yourself again. A few days later, Grace invited me to dinner. As soon as I arrived, she hugged me. I'm proud of you. For writing books. She smiled. No. For surviving everything that tried to break you. Daniel walked into the room carrying 2 boxes of pizza. I heard there was an emotional speech happening. Grace rolled her eyes. You always ruin serious moments. I improve them, he said with a grin. We all laughed. While we were eating, Daniel pointed at me. You know something? What? Heartbreak accidentally created a famous author. Grace laughed. He's right. I shook my head. I'd rather have learned the lesson an easier way. Daniel raised his drink. Maybe. But then we wouldn't have these books. I smiled. Fair point. The following week, Emma called me. Are you free tomorrow evening? I think so. Dinner? Is this another interview? She laughed. No. This time, it's just dinner. I smiled. I'd like that. The restaurant was quiet. There were no cameras, no reporters, and no questions about my books. It was just the two of us talking. Emma looked at me and smiled. You seem lighter. I feel lighter. I've noticed. She took a sip of her coffee. So? Are you finally ready to stop hiding behind your work? I laughed. Maybe. She tilted her head. Maybe? I spent years protecting my heart. And now? I think it's ready to trust again. She smiled warmly. I was hoping you'd say that. Our conversations became longer. Sometimes we talked about books. Sometimes about childhood memories. Sometimes about nothing important at all. What mattered was how peaceful everything felt. There were no games. No false promises. No fear of being left behind. Just honesty. One afternoon, after finishing a meeting with Victor, I decided to walk home instead of taking a taxi. Without thinking, my feet led me to the old cafe where Olivia and I had our first date. I stopped across the street. The place looked exactly the same. For a moment, I remembered the young man who had walked into that cafe with big dreams and an even bigger heart. I smiled. Not because I wanted those days back. Because I was grateful for how far I had come. I quietly whispered, "Thank you." Not to Olivia. Not to fate. To myself. For refusing to give up. For writing even when nobody believed in me. For choosing hope over bitterness. I walked inside the cafe and ordered a cup of coffee. The waiter placed it on the table with a smile. First time here? I looked around the room. It feels like it. After finishing my coffee, I stepped outside and looked up at the clear afternoon sky. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma. "Emma, how's your day going?" I smiled and replied. "Me, better than I ever imagined." A few seconds later, she answered. "Emma, good. Don't forget dinner tonight." Me, I wouldn't miss it. I put my phone back into my pocket and continued walking. That evening, before leaving my apartment, I opened the journal that had stayed beside my desk through every chapter of my life. I turned to the final empty page. Without hesitation, I picked up my pen and wrote. Some people return asking for another chance, but the strongest endings are the ones you write for yourself. I closed the journal gently. For years, I believed success would heal me. I was wrong. Success gave me opportunities. Forgiveness gave me peace. Self-respect gave me freedom. And moving forward gave me a future. As I turned off the lights and walked out the door, I realized my story had never been about losing the woman I loved. It had always been about finding the man I was meant to become. That was the ending I had searched for all along. And for the first time in my life, I knew the next chapter would be written with hope instead of regret.